So I record these sessions and edit them and then post them so that if you miss the facilitated discussion and you want to watch what we did or find out what we talked about, I will post them on the facilitated discussion. Whoops, somebody came in. Sorry, I got distracted. I'll post them on that page in our course. And I'll also, when I use PowerPoint slides, I put them up there as well. So it depends how computer savvy I am that day about how long it takes me to edit the video, because stuff that's not important, I just kind of get rid of it. So welcome everybody to week 1, first facilitated discussion. Really excited to meet everyone. This is another big group. We've got 17 in the group. Some of you guys I met already in organizational behavior, and you may notice I'm in a new space. I'm back in Toronto, unfortunately. And apparently, as soon as I left out west, it snowed like all Billy-o, so they had some great skiing the last couple of days, but I missed out on it. Oh well. It's a hard life. So let me just, there we go. So I'm going to put up my PowerPoint slides and share them with you and just do a little start from beginning, do a little chat about what we're planning to do in the course. So can you see welcome to human resource management? I think so. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good. I've got 2 screens and it's interesting for managing things. Okay. So welcome to our course. The coffee is because, you know, as normal, I got nervous and I don't know what time it was. I got up this morning, somewhere around 3 o'clock. My husband made the mistake of saying to me last night, now don't get nervous, your class will be great. And that was it. So welcome to Human Resource Management. And this week is really about an introduction. So there are, as far as our agenda is concerned, there's 3 things that we're going to be focusing on today. I'm going to do a quick welcome and course overview, and then I'm going to put you guys to work. There were 2 worksheets. Now, I know some of you were not able to get into Brightspace yet, and I might have sent you the worksheets. So don't worry if you haven't got it done this week. In the following weeks, it's really important that you do the worksheets when you come to the session so you have something to speak from, that you've given a little thought. But we're going to do a small group discussion about the diagram around human resources in the different areas and find out what kinds of things based on your reading that you would change. And then we'll come back and talk about what you guys decided, and then we'll go into new groups. And my question is, what HR competency or competencies are you really wanting to focus on building while you're in this course? So the course as a whole has 3 key goals: learning about human resources, building a vibrant learning community, and application. So on that first goal, we're going to be looking at all of these different areas of human resources. And I got to be honest with you, this is going to be a pretty high level review of these areas, because some of you are already taking courses that focus just on that. Like I think, Rachel, aren't you taking the negotiation course right now?
Yeah, I'm taking, Erin and I are both in with Tom Sowell doing negotiation and conflict resolution. Seems really interesting.
So
I'm
that's
in that one as well.
And so that would be a big part of the sort of labor relations field. Last December, I just finished a 3-course program on learning experience design, which would fit into that employee development area. So, you know, as we go through stuff, basically think of this as a taster of all the different areas. And if there's something that really grabs your interest and you want to dive into it, you know, you can do that on your own, or you could sign up for a course that goes into that area in particular. The second goal is that vibrant learning community. So there's a couple of components attached to this. We have a facilitated discussion. It'll be on Mondays at this time. So for those of you in Halifax, that's at 12:30. Toronto people, it's 11:30. And for our BC participants, that's 8:30 in the morning. But please note, on May 23rd, that's the long weekend. So we're not going to get together on the Monday. However, that's where we get to the second part, the discussion boards. If you're not able to participate in the facilitated discussion, you can go on the discussion board and you can answer the questions that are posed there. And on the 23rd, there's actually a group activity that you're going to be doing, and you're going to be posting the stuff up on the discussion board, but we won't be getting together to share it. And there's also going to be these team activities. So in the facilitated discussion today, I'm going to be putting you into teams. For that May 23rd assignment, which isn't graded, but it leads to a graded assignment. You're going to be working with others doing some research. And I've also given you the opportunity to pair up with somebody to work on the assignments if you want to do that. And so that might be part of how you're learning about a different industry and how they would approach the issues in that industry. And just because you worked with one person on assignment 1 doesn't mean you can't do assignment 2 on your own, or that you can't do assignment 2 with somebody completely different because you want to learn from somebody else. So lots of choices there. And in terms of a vibrant community, look at, I tried to do a map based on what I found out about you guys. That's me in Toronto. We've got 2 people in BC, and then we've got a whole pile in the Nova Scotia area. Some people didn't tell me where they were from, so if you send me that information, I can update my little map. But in OB, you know, this created some really interesting dynamics that we learned about in terms of virtual teams and how to work together effectively. So when we get into some of the team activities, remember, we're not all on the same time schedule, and we need to figure out how to work together effectively. Goal number 3, just learning about stuff is not enough, because you read it or I talk about it, and if I'm lucky, a day later you remember a little bit, but not much. And when people really start to own stuff is when they start applying the concepts. And so there'll be lots of opportunities for you to take what you're reading and apply it. We have a case study that you can apply to. And so, for example, and the coloring on this is intentional. So these sort of sparkly dots are non-graded applications. And so when I think it's week 3, we're doing diversity and inclusion, and we're going to apply it to the case study that we're going to work on. But it's not going to be graded, but the opportunity for you is to practice, because the following week you're going to start working on a wellness proposal, and that's assignment number 1. The recruitment proposal is assignment number 2. Later on in the course, you get to do another application to the case study about performance management, but that's not going to be graded. So lots of opportunity for you to take theory and try to apply it to the case. And I also really encourage you to apply it to your own workplace. Does this make sense? Could I do this? Would I have to tweak it somehow to make it work? So using our critical thinking skills to figure out how we might use this in our real world. Okay, there's been a few questions about the textbook, Rachel. And so the textbook, I haven't really emphasized it. If you are taking the professional designation exam, you may want to invest in getting a textbook. When I did my research, I started with the textbook, but what I was really finding was that the pandemic had just accelerated everything so much that a lot of what was in the textbook was pretty dated. So if you're thinking about getting it, I want you to talk to me before you spend any money. Like if you can find it at the library, great. Okay, but I don't want you spending money without thinking it through a bit. Okay, so I think that's everything I have to say about the welcome. Did anybody want to ask me any questions before we move on? So one of the easiest ways to ask me a question, because right now I can see myself and 3 other people. If you use the raise hand, which is under, is it annotations? No. Is it under, oh crumbs, where apps? No, more. Reactions. That's the one that you want, and you can raise, that's a clap. Where's raise my hand? So you can see on mine, I've got a little hand there, and then when I get picked, I can remove my hand. So does anybody have any questions they want to ask me? No, you're okay. Well, that means I go to the next piece. Whoops. And, oh, I went too far. Okay, so for the first piece today, where you guys get to apply, is a small group discussion. And I gave you a number of articles that you could have a look at. And be careful, because I get really, really excited when I'm reading articles and I see good stuff in all of them. And then I go, which one should I put up? And I go, well, I'll put them all up and let them choose. So it's better to read 1 or 2 articles with intention than it is to sort of blow through all of them and not get anything out of any of them. Okay, so read articles with intention. And the question that I was asking you to think about as you went through the articles was this diagram that was supposed to sort of represent the human resources function, its goals, its areas, and some of the external organizational and global things that impact on them. So I'm going to put you into 4 groups, and there'll probably be 3 people in each group. And I'm going to ask you to identify some things that you would like to change on this diagram that would bring it more up to date with what you were reading. So it might be something simple like how a functional area has been identified, or it might be something that you think's missing, or something that's there that you don't think that HR is doing that much anymore. So I'm looking for 3 changes that you would like to make as a group. And when you go into these groups, it's probably good to spend a minute at the beginning and identify who's going to be the person taking notes, who's the person that's going to present back to the group, and who's going to watch the clock and keep things running so that when you're supposed to be back, you've got something and you're ready to discuss it with us. So that's the plan. Did it? And one of the things that people like to do was before they went off into the groups, often they would take a picture of this slide with their camera, so they had the question in front of them while they were in the groups, because once you go in the groups, you can't see the questions anymore. So while I set up groups, you guys can take pictures. Or to this computer.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, so we're all back now. If I could get you guys to, if you're not going to be speaking, if you could mute your voice, that would be great, because then we won't hear a lot of stuff going on. And can you all see the diagram on the page now? Okay. Do you have at the bottom of your page a button called Annotate? Because what I'm going to do, no? Kim's going, no, she doesn't have it. John, do you have it at the bottom of yours?
I do not, no.
Because it doesn't say. Rachel, what would you like to tell me?
For me, annotate, so I've got you in full screen view right now. And so when you go under view options, there's a drop down and annotate is one of those options.
Ah, okay. So you need to do a drop down to get to annotate. Because what I'm going to ask you guys to do, oh, John's writing. What I'm going to ask you to do is for each of the 4 teams to put one idea on the diagram. So whoever your presenter was, pick one of the ideas. So for example, if I were going to annotate and I wanted to change HR planning and analysis to something else, I could cross it out and then I could write down what our group said it should be. And if I don't like what I've done, I can erase it. Okay. So if you could just, each group, just write one, mark one of the changes that you made to the diagram, and then we'll ask you to explain the change. Okay. So we got one. Anyone else got one they can add to that?
How do we mark on this again?
So there should be a drop-down menu that shows you something called Annotate. And once you open it, it gives you a whole bunch of choices around putting text or just doing free writing and stuff like that. It's an experiment. So far we've got DEI and wellness. Anything else people want to add? Well, let's start with those first 2 and then we'll go to the other 2 groups and I can add it in. So the group that was talking about DEI, could you tell us what you were thinking, please?
Well, really just that affirmative action is kind of an outdated term, and diversity, equity, and inclusion has more of an area that seems to be much more popular and
Right.
important these days.
Yeah, okay. And certainly it's when you start looking at some of the key things that HR is involved in, that's right at the very top of the list these days. So getting the language correct, and when we get to that in week 3, we'll have some interesting graphics to help us understand the difference between some of the terminology there. Thanks a lot, John.
Sure thing. I also just wanted to say real quick that I put the little check mark there next to the wellness under goals because our group also came up with that one. So it's a good one.
Okay, you want to speak to that?
I mean, we can leave that for the other folks.
Okay, all right. Would somebody like to talk about wellness if that came up in their group?
Yeah, we were discussing that.
Okay.
The comment came up that being real about people weren't really the focus. And especially moving forward, a lot of those articles related to wellness of employees, follow through, adding extra jobs to communicate with people and check in. And
Yeah.
so we thought that would be a good core goal.
So in week 4, you're actually going to be doing an assignment on wellness. and putting together a proposal for the pharmacy on how they could approach wellness. And the pandemic again has really shone a light on the amount of stress that people are having that's associated with workload, working from home, Zoom meetings, all of this stuff. Erin has her hand up. Would you like to say something, Erin?
Are there other terms people have come across other than wellness that organizations are using because of the way it gets kind of thrown around and kind of co-opted sometimes for nefarious reasons? And I'm just kind of wondering, like, if there's anything new kind of floating around in the HR or business world that people are leaning towards.
Does anybody have a thought on that one that they would like to share? Yes, Dawn.
I read around employee well-being is one of the ways I've seen it described.
Okay. Yeah, so employee well-being, but wellness is really a popular term right now that we're seeing a lot of. Another group, so thanks for those questions and answers. Another group mentioned change development and staffing into new categories for long-term individuals. So you want to share with us what your thinking there was?
I think one thing we discussed was the idea that in a lot of the articles, it's interesting how the push has been to acknowledge people and as individuals, while also there's this big push for data and also, you know, finding ways to predict behavior and things like that. And it's a little bit of a contradiction, a little bit of an oxymoron to look at people as individuals and also as, you know, using, going heavy on the data and analytics. But the idea of also like employee, it goes into well-being, it goes into retention, it goes into lifestyle changes, seeing them as individuals. You know, creating things like employment plans from the beginning that can follow them and with reskilling and things like that, because how quickly technology develops, the idea that there's no such thing, you'll never know enough anymore in the employment world. You'll always have to, it's lifelong learning no matter what. So from the get-go, creating that, you know, the idea of like onboarding, or orientation, I guess, in this sense, you know, yes, it works with employee development, but like, I think it needs to be a little bit more extensive and the like, you know, so you're not going to lose somebody just because they want a lifestyle change. It's like, okay, well, how can we work with you from the beginning to, you know, make some changes? Or yeah, like the reskilling thing is, I think a lot of us feel that very personally. And it obviously is coming up a lot.
So are you feeling that in a good way or a bad way?
Well, I don't think, I mean, personally, and others as well, not necessarily feeling that confident about it and our abilities for it, but that's not necessarily that everyone's got the support for it yet, or what those expectations are. And the idea too of like, what's the general consensus going to be on what's really legitimate? Like, are we all just going to go in our own spaces and do online modules forever? Is that going to be reskilling from here on in? And we also, you know, kind of talked about, you know, the generation that's, you can't just keep adding like new people and forgetting the people that are already there. You can't just keep adding the people that have those skills when you already have existing employees. So, you know, I just think that having that engagement and having that awareness so that you're not going to lose people or you're not going to leave people behind is increasingly important.
Okay, so Erin, you're touching on a pile of things, from the supply and demand of labor to how we bring people into the organization, how we keep them engaged within the organization, and how we are going to look at we need to look at employee development really differently. It might not be courses anymore. It might be something really different. So when we get into that, I think it's week 7, I tried to add some of the stuff that I was learning in my course about learning experience design as part of it. Doug, you had your hand raised and then you disappeared. Would you like to say something?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna kind of follow up with what was just said there as well. I think it's crucial, especially for small to medium businesses. One of the things that we've learned during this pandemic is that you can't have enough cross training as well.
Okay.
Because it's just something that, one person getting ill leads to a whole department going down. You need to have some sort of, cross training in your employees as part of your HR and your business model, so that you can, get past these. Because this pandemic, if it has taught us anything, is that some businesses that don't have this cross training, we've seen them close for, up to 2 weeks, because it just simply decimates their workforce.
Right.
So I think there's a lot of things, like you said, that we've learned through this pandemic, and that is definitely one of them, is you can't have enough cross training of your employees.
Okay. So, and along with the cross training comes that whole idea of learning and unlearning skills, because for every skill that we learn, we might have to unlearn how to do something as well. So that's another important part of it. Was there another thing that you guys wanted to modify on the chart that we haven't changed yet?
So for our group, one of the things that we came up with, and for some reason I don't have antidote on my view options.
Okay, I'll do it for
my
you.
computer was the health and wellness for the health, safety, and security.
Yep.
We separated that out because pre-COVID, it could probably be easily grouped together. But with the COVID, the work from home and flex work and all that stuff going on, we felt that health and wellness should have its own pie, because
Okay.
it's grown exponentially since COVID, like mental health, well-being of everyone.
Okay. How's that?
Looks great.
Now it's got its own pie. Yeah, and I think that's important because I came from a manufacturing background, and when I was working it was a chemical company, and so much focus was on safety, but it was about protecting people from workplace injuries. Now this focus on supporting employees to stay healthy and being concerned about their wellness and providing employee assistance programs and things like that, it's huge, and it's so big that we're actually going to do a whole assignment on it. So yeah, great stuff. Anybody else want to change anything on the chart? What do you
I'm
think?
not a spokesperson.
That's
May I
fine.
just this conversation sparked just the question on, for me, I'm keen to know if we'll draw some discussion around role clarity, and whether it be job design or just to manage burnout within your staff, so that you're often revisiting the roles and responsibilities of the individuals on your team, so that you haven't, 6, 12, 24 months seen creep without recognizing the creep in their roles. You're introducing, burnout without being aware of it. So, and I think, I don't want to tag everything back to the pandemic. I think that's independent of the pandemic, but we do get asked to do a lot, depending on the environment and the circumstances, and sometimes it's outside of what that individual is hired to do. But those tasks, if they get good at it, can quickly become added to their job, and you don't recognize those additions, and over time, you've got a problem on your hands. So, I don't know what label to put on that, but job design, role clarity, org structure and alignment, that kind of thing.
So I'm gonna thank you. And can you tell me how you pronounce your first name?
Sure thing. Yeah, it's Duram. It's like
Duram. Okay.
the 80s band. I think some people here would recognize Duran Duran, not everybody, but
Okay.
Duran Duran, but with an M at the end.
Okay, Duran. So when I was looking at the chart, I went HR planning and analysis is not, that's not the terminology, it's workforce planning. And it's just not job analysis, it's also competency modeling. And you'll see in this week's material, when it goes into, you know, what does one need to do as a HR professional, we're doing it from a modeling perspective, not a job analysis perspective. So we're talking about the skills and abilities that somebody needs to perform in this particular area. And then the other part you were talking about is down here, it's covered right now, but performance management. There was a really interesting piece that when we get into performance management, that gets to what you're talking about, Doram, which is using, first of all, changing how we do performance management. So it's not this yearly review thing. It's a more regular check-in and more in line with some of the things that we've learned from agile organizations that do stand-up meetings and stuff like that. And within that performance management, constantly reviewing either the job analysis or the competency model to make sure it's up to date. And so that's how we're trying to recognize this stuff that we've asked people to do and we've added it to their list, but it maybe not made, it didn't make it in there formally.
So you will touch on that in this curriculum? Okay, great.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Did any of the groups talk about the center, the goals of productivity, quality, and service? Or would anybody like to comment about those? Do you think those are the goals of a human resources function?
I think they certainly are, but one of the things that we kind of touched on in our group as well is just the shift in the of what exactly HR is and how it's thought of in the corporate environment. I mean, it used to be, it was kind of that department off to the side that was responsible for disciplinary actions and reviews and money and raises and that kind of thing. But now it's become integral. It's an integral part of any company. One of the big things I think in the center there is a corporate conscience. And, you know, it seems like there's an ongoing shift on that responsibility as well, where these corporations, you know, have to be environmentally responsible. They have to be responsible to their employees to create those employees or keep those employees in retention. So I just think how we view HR itself has completely changed.
Yeah. These words here, they really worry me. So I'm going to make it red. How do I make it red? Well, those to me are not great words to describe HR anymore. Some of the words I was thinking about, at the very bottom is compliance. Sorry, I can't spell, guys. Compliance, okay? But what we're seeing much more is strategy and business partner. And I have to understand my business. So, I mean, we have somebody here that's in manufacturing that's making disposable plates and stuff like that. Well, the human resources department has to understand what your product is and some of the challenges facing your organization in order to come up with legitimate plans on how to support the people in your group. So having in the competencies, they talked about business acumen. So, you know, that's really understanding what's going on. And the other, relationship management. I am human resources is a consultant. And so being able to manage relationships with managers and to demonstrate that what we're doing is of value is a really important piece. So those are some of the words that I was thinking of to replace the goals of productivity, quality, and service. Does anybody want to comment on any of those? Erin, what would you like to say?
I think something that kind of stood out to me was really the idea of one, that it is, you know, accepted now that they need to be a strategic partner, but also the importance of HR understanding the needs and challenges of the workforce. And I was listening to the Freakonomics episode of whether or not like unions are the way forward and where they belong now and where they belong in the past. And I thought it was really interesting and probably, you know, more relevant now than it's been in quite a while with everything that's been going on in the past couple of years. But I assume there's probably more information that we'll cover on that in the course at some point, or some readings that approach that.
Yeah.
But I
So
think
last week we're going to talk about unions. It's an overview of some of the basic functions, but usually, like when I taught labor relations, that was one of my first questions. I used to ask people is like, do unions have a place in business? And
Yeah.
I didn't just ask my students, I also asked my peers in the industry. And one of the comments I got that really stuck with me was that they are an important balance of power, and that as legislation or circumstance takes power away from unions, then management starts to do some things that earns them the right to have somebody overseeing what they're doing, which is what basically a union does. And in its theoretical format. So we'll be talking about unions and labor relations a bit in week 12.
even just like the acknowledgement of, you know, the difference of an employee not having to commute to work, or,
Yep.
you know, finally acknowledging for people who are parents, like what the different challenges are, and, you know, in maybe a more direct way than they've had to in the past. You know, all of that kind of catching up in the past couple of years. But I also thought it was really interesting, and we talked about it in the group, the chart of the HR jobs of the future, which was very terrifying, where there was like 60 different jobs mentioned, and some of the job titles were very interesting, but I have to dig it out again and save it because I thought it was like incredible. Obviously, like most people it's not going to apply to because you have to be a massive organization. But yeah, the different things that they had to consider was incredible. And it is that balance of like, these are people and individuals and URL data, and how are we going to, you know, like, how are we all going to relate to each other? What's our culture going to be? And how are we going to work with people, like individuals?
Yeah. So it's almost as if this, like we got put in a snowball and got shook up. And some of the rules that worked pre-pandemic will continue to work. And some of the processes and policies we've seen, they need to be changed. And so a lot of what we're going to be doing is taking this high level, what's going on and where might we be going in the future. So this is a good start to the whole discussion. We're obviously not going to have a chance to start talking about competencies, but there was, oh, where's that? Is it? No, that's not the one I wanted. I thought I saw it. Oh, I know where I saw it, here. I got too many things open. Can you, I'm going to stop sharing and go back. And so when you guys were looking at the competencies, Was there anything in particular that surprised you as a competency for human resources, or something that you're particularly wanting to work on in this course? And maybe if we could hear from somebody who hasn't spoken yet, that would be great. Would it help if I got that diagram up? Where did it go? Give me a second. And if somebody wanted to speak, go ahead. I'm just looking for my diagram.
I'll just mention, it's not that it surprised me, I think, but there were competencies when looking at them all and seeing which ones I thought were key for future HR jobs. The ones that really focused on, like, for example, effective leadership in human resources as a pillar of a business, or advancement of human resources profession. To me, it sort of seemed like, even though it's an important role, it was building it up in the traditional sense that we have now, and not integrating it in a partnership and looking at new ways to interact with employees. So to me, instead of building it as a standalone, conglomerate of a process, really looking at new ways to be able to promote other competencies that will match the way that the workforce is shifting. So those were the ones I didn't highlight for moving toward future jobs. And then for me, I know you've already brought it up, but I'm personally in an institution that is like a signature away from unionizing. So I'm really going to be interested in learning everything that I can about how to work in that environment.
Okay. So I managed to pull up this is from the Human Resources Association, showing the functional knowledge areas that professional and HR needs, and then the competencies, the skills and abilities that they need to do these things. And so when you look at that list in our last 3 minutes, is there anything there that strikes you as something unexpected, or something that's missing? You know what's missing for me here on the enabling competencies? I wish they hit harder on, well, they have analytical decision making, but I would really like them to hit harder on that, because my experience in the community college system was that I got a lot of students who chose human resources as a field of interest because they didn't have to do math. And that was the wrong reason to get into HR, because HR has become very data driven. And so being both competent with technology and able to understand the costing behind things is an important part of being a business partner. So here's your chance, John. Last statement. What did
I just wanted to, I think it's completely misguided to not think that you have to do math in HR, because you have to add and subtract people all the time.
And with that, we will draw today to an end. Yeah, that's one of the many functions that we get to do in human resources. So this is basically how these facilitated discussions go. One of the things that I've added are these worksheets. And so, if you've done the worksheet, you kind of come with some prep ideas about what you want to say to people and share. And if you do the prep sheet or the worksheet, but you don't come to the facilitated discussion, it's the beginning of what you're going to put on your discussion board posting. So I encourage you to use those as a way of organizing your ideas and thoughts and prepping for these sessions so you can participate. I like to finish at 12:30, so I'm going to say goodbye, but I'm also going to say that if anybody wants to stay and ask me any questions, please do. And if you come up with a question you want to ask me between now and next week, just send me an email and I'll get back to you. So thank you so much for coming today, and I'm looking forward to getting to know you even more and talk more about HR. Next week, it's all legal stuff and the compliance stuff, so that should be interesting. Okay, have a great week, and I'll see you next.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Linda. Thank you, everybody. Nice to meet you.